Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Teaching Excellence. My name is Augie Grant. I'm the director of CTE. It is a pleasure to have you here. It's an even bigger pleasure to introduce your two presenters today. I've had the pleasure of knowing Charlie for how many, 17 years?
Long, that sounds about right.
Charlie Adams is a clinical assistant professor and the speech language pathologist and clinical assistant professor in the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders. I know him most as one of the most involved faculty members on campus. I first met him doing service on the Faculty Welfare Committee. We've had a chance to work together on a number of committees, as well as a chance for me to get to know some of his work. He is in the Arnold School of Public Health, where he specializes in stuttering and supervises stuttering therapy for children, adolescents, and adults who stutter at the USC Speech and Hearing Research Center. He's been teaching graduate coursework since 2000, and he led the National Stuttering Association's Columbia chapter since 2001. He is known not only on a state and a national level, but an international level for his work. In 2013, he got the award for the NSA Speech Language Pathologist of the Year. Presenting with him today is a person I have the pleasure of working with on a daily basis, the Assistant Director of the Center for Teaching Excellence, Aisha Haynes. She oversees the instructional design team here at CTE. She's a certified Quality Matters peer and master reviewer. She's earned online teaching certifications from the Online Teaching Consortium. She also is a faculty member teaching courses for the College of Hospitality, Retail, and Sports Management in Palmetto College. She's graduate associate faculty in the College of Education, and her research interests include instructional design and online learning environments, online course accessibility, universal design for learning, learning styles, collaboration, and engagement in online learning environments. In short, these are people who love teaching, love the university, and have a mission, and they're going to share that mission with you today. So I give them to you.
Thanks, Augie.
All right, thank you so much, Augie. Before we begin, I'd like to say that I am a person who stutters, but give it a minute and you'll get used to it. Now that we got that out of the way, we'd like to see who we have here with us today. So please pull out your smart devices and go to slido.com and use the event code WeStutter. So the majority of people know someone who stutters. There are few people who stutter here in the audience, as well as faculty who stutter, staff who stutter, had a faculty member who stutters, and faculty member who has or had a student who stutters. So here is an outline of what we will cover today. We will answer the question, what is stuttering? We will give some considerations for students who stutter, faculty who stutter, as well as share some help for stuttering. So we want to know, what do you currently know about stuttering? It's a think, pair, share activity. So think about and write down what you currently know about stuttering. Pair with someone to discuss what you know, and then we're going to ask you later to share with the group what you know. All right, so what do you all currently know about stuttering? What have you been sharing or learning from your neighbor? I heard a lot of talking.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Crystal Finney, and the three of us were speaking about what you know about stuttering. We have a student who is in speech pathology, and she found out that she thinks it may be neurological, but hasn't been proven. She's noticed that there are avoidance behaviors in people who stutter. I shared that I am a stutterer, especially since I've gotten older. My son stutters, and in doing therapy with him, discovered that there are certain triggers, certain consonants that he will stutter over more than others. It's something it never disappears, but that you are taught strategies to deal with it, and that it can be hereditary.
Good.
Would anyone else like to share? Maybe one more person from here, and then we'll go with Mary with the online audience to see if something is happening on online. Is there anyone else here first in the room that would like to share what you currently know about stuttering? All right, Mary, do you have anything on online?
Well, several people said they knew very little, but we're looking forward to learning. And one student said it's a multifactorial speech disorder that may have emotional impact.
Excellent.
Thank you. We have a video that we're going to show. You want to say anything before the video?
No. Okay. No.
Stuttering is an experience where the individual loses control of their ability to communicate what they want to.
Like I can't really sound out words at times. It takes me a while to say what the average person might say in a second.
It is the kind of obvious repetition of words and sounds. To me, a stutter is like a disruption in your speech, but people stutter differently. For me, I block a lot, so no sound comes out when I try to speak.
I can't get the word out, or I repeat words.
As you're trying to speak, you have your thoughts in your mind of what you will say, and as you're trying to say it, it feels as if someone is just stepped in to like block off your words or take your words away.
But there's so much more on the emotional end of it that is much harder to deal with.
Making friends as a child while having a stutter was definitely hard. I grew up very covert in stuttering in that I hid it a lot. And when you hide something your whole life, you really build up a wall.
When a child stutters, it causes difficulty with interacting and making friends, and I don't think children have developed the coping skills to understand why they're having such trouble getting words out and repeating.
Kids back in school didn't really understand, so I never really had a lot of friends in school.
It was hard to make friends and make connections with people. So it was something I definitely had a hard time dealing with.
I just didn't have any real resources until I was into my mid-teens that I could really trust or to either talk about stuttering or really help me cope with it.
Okay, so that gives you some idea of the impact of stuttering. I thought we'd go over a couple basic definitions of stuttering. This is one from a textbook that I've used, an abnormally high frequency or duration of stoppages in the forward flow of speech. So I think one of the important things about that definition is the word abnormally high, because keep in mind, we all have stoppages and interruptions in our speech when we talk. Stuttering is not the same as that. And so a lot of definitions also contrast with fluency, which is effortless and flowing. So, pop quiz, who's this? Bruce Willis. Did you know that he stutters? Bruce Willis stutters. Throughout this presentation, a random person is going to pop up on a slide, and I want to see how quickly you guys can identify people you would know. This is a much longer definition of stuttering, and I'm not going to read it to you. But what's good about this definition is it also references reactions to stuttering. Reactions by the person who stutters, which can be cognitive to what you think and emotional, what you feel. So the disorder of, it makes a distinction between the behavior of stuttering, which is the interruptions in speech, and the disorder of stuttering, which includes the impact that stuttering has on you. This is a really important definition too. This is by one of the founders, not only of stuttering therapy, but of the field of speech pathology, Charles Van Riper. He said, stuttering is everything we do trying not to stutter. And that's an important definition because everyone who grows up stuttering tries to figure out how not to stutter. And in some cases, the hiding can be more of a problem than the stuttering. And you heard that referenced in the first part of the film as well. So where does it come from? There is absolutely a genetic component to stuttering. We know that about 70% of people who stutter can identify a family member who stutters. It's not always, it can sometimes skip a generation as well. We know that there are environmental influences that can impact maybe not the fact that you stutter, but certainly the degree to which you stutter from one situation to the next. And there's a random element in there too. We don't know everything about what causes stuttering, but we're finding out more all the time. Okay, let's talk some statistics here. In the adult population, 1% of all adults stutter, 1%. So that's actually a lot of people. And that's over 3 million people in this country alone. And the ratio of males to females in the adult stuttering population is 4 to 1. Interestingly, in kindergarten, about 5% of all kids in kindergarten stutter. Different studies have different numbers, but somewhere around 5% of kindergarten age kids stutter. And the fact that only 1% continue to stutter in adulthood is not because they all got excellent speech therapy. A lot of kids just grow out of it. You see also the ratio of males to females is different in the kindergarten population. That's more like 2 to 1. So females are less likely to stutter in the first place. And if they do stutter at an early age, they're more likely to recover from it. Okay, we have some categories for stuttering behaviors. We have the primary behaviors, those are the ones that you see in here, and secondary behaviors. The primary behaviors they touched on in the film. You have repetitions, which can be a sound repetition like that, or sometimes it can be a whole word repetition or even a phrase repetition. We also have prolongations. That's where the initial sound of the word is stretched out like that. And you heard one of the fellas in the film talk about how he blocks a lot. And a block is a term for a stoppage. No sound is coming out and things kind of freeze like that, where no sound is coming out. Secondary behaviors are reactions to primary behaviors. These are ways in which kids learn to start doing something about their stuttering. First thing you do, if you think of stuttering as getting stuck, as a kid, when you get stuck, you want to get unstuck. So anything that you do to get unstuck, when you get stuck, we call an escape behavior. As things go on, many kids start to figure out words or situations where they're more likely to stutter, and they figure out how to avoid stuttering altogether. And so those, of course, are called avoidance behaviors. And not surprisingly, in speech therapy, we target those avoidance behaviors quite a bit. Who do we got? Anybody? Sports fan. He's headed back to the World Series. Anybody? MVP 2 years ago of the World Series, George Springer, stutters. And he's given lots of talks about that. He's met with groups of kids who stutter. He's done a great job of outreach for us. A lot of misunderstandings about stuttering. These are some common misconceptions, and it's important to know that these have nothing to do with stuttering. It's not caused by nervousness, doesn't have anything to do with confidence, and it certainly doesn't have anything to do with being untruthful. Now, we use the iceberg as a great metaphor for stuttering. The reason the iceberg is a good metaphor is because most of the iceberg you can't see. 80 to 90% of the iceberg is underwater, invisible. Stuttering is like that too. If you think of those primary behaviors, those repetitions, prolongations, and blocks, think of those as the tip of the iceberg. So what do you think is underneath the waterline? What's the rest of the problem of stuttering? Next slide. A lot of the reactions to stuttering, a lot of the emotional and cognitive components that go along with stuttering. So another reason this is a great metaphor for stuttering is that in therapy, when you want to treat stuttering, if you just treat the behaviors, you're not getting much bang for your buck. You're not treating most of the problem. So good stuttering therapy will address all components of stuttering. Okay, you heard someone mention covert stuttering in the video. Covert stuttering is a very real phenomenon. It's someone who has the ability to hide stuttering altogether to the point where they can pass as someone who does not stutter. And this is an important population to understand because covert stuttering is not easy. Most people who stutter are unable to hide it completely. Those who can sometimes do, and the longer you hide it, the more you feel like you have to hide it, and that becomes a bit of a trap. And so that's a special population of stuttering called covert stuttering. Okay, we have an activity. For this activity, we need to pair up as best we can. We might need to do some threes, but maybe if someone from this table could jump over to that table, for example, so we could pair up. Maybe you can jump back to that table. So we've got everybody in twos, if that's possible. You need to be seated next to someone. And this is about handwriting. Okay, so maybe if you could come sit here, and you guys can work together. So the way this works, in each pair, all right, remember we need paper to write on and something to write with. So yeah, flip one of these over and get ready to write. Now, we're going to take turns. One of you is going to write first. Decide who's going to write first in your pair. You're both going to get to do it. We're taking turns. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. In your best handwriting, I want the writer to write something out. Probably for our purposes, let's just say write out the Pledge of Allegiance. I think that's something that we all know. You go ahead and start writing. It's important that you use your best handwriting here because think of this as a contest. The best handwriting is going to win the contest. All right, now the person next to the person who's writing. This is important. This is important. Start writing. Writers start writing. And for the person who's not writing, what I want you, are you going to write? You can write anything you want.
Yeah, we're going to pick something else.
Anything you want. Okay. Now the person who's not writing, what I want you to do, I need you to be writing, is I want you to come up and just bump them. Bump that writing hand, just gently. Okay. Okay, let's take a break. So, let's think about what just happened. All right, when you were writing and you knew what was coming, what were you doing to prepare for it? You were stopping a lot, weren't you? You were trying to time it, right? So your timing was off a little bit. What else? What other changes did you make?
You're actually
tensed up. That's
anticipating.
it. That's it. You anticipate. That's exactly right. And that's what people who stutter do. This is very much like stuttering. You don't know when it's coming, but you know it's coming. You try to anticipate it. Maybe you successfully anticipate it. Maybe you don't. But the outcome is communication that's not as clear, right? Your handwriting is not as neat as you wish it was. Okay? So that's just a quick little exercise to maybe get you thinking a little bit about the experience of stuttering. All right, this one's a little tougher. Who do we have here?
Darwin.
Charles Darwin. Pretty smart guy, right? Stutters. Okay. This you, Aisha?
Yes.
Okay.
So here are some considerations for students who stutter. Allow people to get to know you. We all know that college is diverse, and students need to see more diversity in people. So this gives you an opportunity to show off your uniqueness. Also, disclose your stuttering. Go ahead and let people know about let people know about your stuttering. This is easier said than done. I will tell you about my story a little bit later. But also get out of your comfort zone and get involved. Do things like join clubs and various things that you enjoy doing. Don't let stuttering hold you back. Also, don't let stuttering prevent you from selecting a major. I met people who have done this in the past, so don't let stuttering prevent you from selecting a major. And also seek out a National Stuttering Association chapter. Charlie and I both lead the Columbia chapter here. We meet every second Thursday at the Montgomery Speech and Language Clinic in the Close Hip building. Here are some accommodations for students who stutter. Additional time on presentations. You'll be having breaks during presentations. Also having alternative presentation options, like video or having a one-on-one presentation with the professor. For those discussion-based tasks, providing students with a written option.
Okay. So we're talking about stuttering in the classroom, both from the student and faculty perspective. But from the student perspective, college is a really good time for people to get out in front of their stuttering if you stutter. There's some good reasons for that. College is very much like a bridge. College is certainly a bridge between school and work. College is also a bridge between childhood and adulthood. So college is a really good time if you're still struggling with stuttering, still trying to find your way. College is a great time to try to get a handle on that a little bit. There are a lot of different ways to do that. I want to tell you about some friends of mine. This is Gabrielle. I first met Gabrielle in the 7th grade when her parents brought her to our speech and hearing center for stuttering. Interesting thing was, when we got her in the therapy room, she did not stutter. She didn't stutter at all. She was much more fluent than I was. And the only way that we could get her to stutter in the therapy room was to leave the room, put one of her parents in the therapy room with her, then we would go back to my office and watch on the monitor. And if we watched closely and waited long enough, we'd start to hear her stutter a little bit with her mom or her dad, where she was able to let herself stutter. She tried to stutter. She was unable to allow herself to stutter in therapy. So we didn't spend too long in therapy. Middle school for her was a time for her to hide. It's not a time for therapy for her. So we ended that run of therapy after a short run. And I didn't see her for a while. I didn't see her until she was a senior in high school. She showed up in our support group one month. It was in the springtime, and she was stuttering noticeably at that point. And she wanted to share what was going on. And so we were glad to hear that. And she said that she had decided that she needed to stop hiding the stuttering. She wanted to change things for a number of reasons. Most importantly, she felt like she wasn't connecting with people. She wasn't having meaningful conversations because she was so wrapped up in not stuttering and doing whatever she could not to stutter. First of all, she wasn't putting herself in a lot of situations where she could possibly get to know people. And when she was in those situations, she was choosing her words very carefully and not speaking much. So she decided it was time to change that, and she was about to go off to college. So again, perfect opportunity for her, whole new set of people, new place, new experiences, new Gabrielle. She's been back a few times since then. She's now a junior. She is much more comfortable with her speech now than she was back in high school. And she's still struggling a little bit with her stuttering, but she says that it gets easier every semester. And so she's doing great. Now, who is that guy? Churchill. Winston Churchill. Stuttered. Good. Another friend of mine, this is Phillip. I met Phillip when he was a freshman here at USC. And so in high school, Phillip did a pretty good job managing his stuttering, but college was a whole different ballgame for him. He was in a fraternity, there's a lot more going on, and the control that he was able to muster in high school over his speech was kind of escaping him. And he was in a bit of a panic mode. And so we worked with Phillip for a while, and he also came to the support group, and he still comes to the support group from time to time. And I followed him on and off for a few years. He came back, in 2015, he came back as a graduate student in our program. So that was a goal of his, to get into the program. He got into the program, he got through the program, and he's now a practicing speech pathologist in Florida. He works in 2 hospitals. So he took this challenge of stuttering and he turned it into a career.
I'm going to talk about our friend, Felicia. So Felicia, she struggled many years to accept her speech, and she ducked and dodged speaking situations. But Felicia just decided to go back to school, and stuttering was then back on the forefront of her mind. But Felicia was very determined not to let stuttering hold her back. So Felicia started graduate school, and she was eager to start a new chapter in her life, but she was wondering how her new cohort in graduate school would accept her speech. Felicia, she went to a large undergraduate school like USC, so it was easy for her to fade in the background, but she was unable to do this at this smaller school. So Felicia had to take a seminar course every semester where she had to give presentations and communicate science to her peers. And the course grade was dependent solely on presentations. So it was in this one seminar course. Felicia made a B midterm, but she did not get any feedback on her presentation. So she talked to her professor to try to get an explanation of her grade, and the professor told Felicia that she just simply did not like her presentation. So Felicia asked, "Well, what didn't you like about my presentation?" And the professor said, the delivery. She said, "For one, it took you too long to say one sentence." So Felicia, being a person who stutters, well aware that it took her longer to say words and sentences than other people. So Felicia asked, "So was my grade based solely on my speech and not the content?" The faculty member said no, that she didn't base it on her speech at all, but that she didn't cover some of the parts of the chapter. But the professor could not give any specific detail. So Felicia felt empowered and decided to contact the ADA coordinator at her school. The ADA coordinator wanted Felicia to have another meeting with the faculty member and have the three of them to meet together. So in the meeting with the faculty member, the professor noted that she in fact stuttered as a child in the Middle East, where stuttering was not widely accepted for girls. So after the three of them met, the professor decided to create a grading policy to ensure that the grade was based on the content that was presented. So Felicia was allowed to redo the presentation, and then she earned a grade of an A. Felicia felt that her voice was heard, and this was a teachable moment. That she learned things about herself, and she also provided stuttering awareness for others. Now I get to talk a little bit about myself. So I was a person who, in the film, one young lady talked about being a person who covertly stuttered. So that was me as well. No one knew about my stuttering at all until I was working here at the university in the Darla School of Business as an instructional technology manager. So I was able to hide my stuttering all that time until I met with a faculty member. I went to go introduce myself to him, and I stuttered in that introduction. But it was good that I stuttered in front of this one person because he noted that he has a son who stutters as well. So it was then that I got involved with the National Stuttering, the National Stuttering Association, met Charlie, went to therapy, and just met a wide variety of people who was going through the same thing that I was going through. So some recent and current opportunities. I went from not speaking at all to speaking in a wide variety of places. I get a chance to do speeches here at the CTE. I got a chance to speak in front of the provosts, vice provosts, various deans, and the department chairs. I just got back from Ole Miss. I did a presentation there for the Association for Distance Education and Independent Learning Conference. I've been invited to do a talk at USC Beaufort on accessibility, making sure that we create accessible documents on Friday. And I'll be going to New Orleans to do a national presentation there on universal design for learning and accessibility Act as well. So here at the university, as Augie mentioned, I'm the assistant director here. And my main focus is accessibility and universal design for learning, maximizing the learning potentials of all students, whether they have a disability or not. So I have here some considerations for faculty. Building a course climate that is inclusive and that has mutual respect. And this is important to set at the beginning of the class. Faculty can also look at meeting with the student to create a plan, and also to encourage the student to speak. Be flexible. Some of those accommodations that I just discussed earlier. How about including people in the curriculum who stutter, so that people can see that so they can normalize stuttering, and also let students know about the support that you're learning about here. As I mentioned earlier, universal design for learning provides all individuals an equal opportunity to learn by creating accessible, usable, and inclusive instructional materials, techniques, and strategies. So you can look at students, giving students various choices for how they complete assignments. Using multiple types of assessment, and not like for Felicia teacher where it was based on one presentation. You can utilize discussion boards, blogs, and wikis to extend the conversation beyond the classroom. Giving students rubrics so they'll know exactly what they're being graded on. You can look at using classroom response systems, and also having flexible formats for office hours, face-to-face as well as online. So some advice from people who stutter. Some things not to tell us. Don't say things like, slow down, or take a deep breath, or spit it out, think about it, or relax. I've actually had one faculty member here who mocked me. So that's one other thing not to do. I met her here at the CTE, and I didn't stutter at all in that presentation. Then I met her somewhere else on campus. I ran into her somewhere else on campus, had a disfluent moment, and she mocked me. So that's one thing not to do, is not to mock as well. Also, don't finish our sentences. Focus on what we're saying and not how we're saying it. Listen patiently, maintain eye contact, and when speaking to us, speak in a normal and relaxed voice.
This guy's been in the news a little bit lately. He stutters. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about stuttering on the other side of the learning equation from the faculty perspective. Oh, another one.
Oh, no, that's a video.
Oh, this is video. Okay, good.
That's the guy that played, that's the actor who played the key.
Change the batteries in the bear. He's a college kid with the stutter who was told by his teacher not to raise his hand. Instead, he's raising his without the slide. And as Diane McInerney reports, he's found a lot of people in his corner as a result.
Teenager Phillip Garber hits the books at his college campus, but 16-year-old Phillip has a bad stutter, and what happened to him in history class is making news across America.
Phillip had his hand raised for almost the entire 75-minute history class here at the County College of Morris in New Jersey, but he says he was never called on by the professor. Then he received an email from the professor urging him not to ask or answer any questions in class because of his stutter.
It stated, "Please see me before and after class if you have any questions, so we do not infringe on other people's time."
The letter that I got made me very angry.
Phillip says he met with the teacher who told him, "Your speaking is disruptive."
The teacher never voiced any concern to me.
Phillip's extreme stutter echoes the problems of King George VI in the Oscar-winning movie The King's Speech. After the New York Times published the story, Phillip's stutter became national news.
I felt that it was very important for my voice to be heard.
Phillip was moved to another class. The professor involved has not commented, and the college hasn't said if she has been disciplined. Phillip's mom says she couldn't be prouder.
He's strong. He's much stronger than I am. He's much braver than I am. I never would have done any of that.
The college says it takes all forms of discrimination seriously, but won't comment on what action, if any, it might take against the professor.
Okay, so I conducted an informal survey of faculty members who stutter, and the questions that I asked were, the first question was, when you, on the first day of class, a class that you teach, do you disclose your stuttering, and if so, how do you do that? And these are some of the responses I got about that. First person says, I usually disclose it at the start of a course, and sometimes we'll announce it before a talk or presentation. Also, usually talk about it briefly on the first day. If they don't understand, please ask me. This guy, I always mention stuttering when I introduce myself. So many of the faculty members that I spoke to were in the habit of disclosing their stuttering. And here's how would you do that? And so this one particular faculty member does research in stuttering. He says, I specialize in stuttering research, therefore it gives me an unfair advantage over the competition because he knows more about the experience. I like this. Before I get started, you'll notice that I'm a person who stutters. I just wanted to let you all know that. And what you also see in these examples is that they're not apologetic. You don't see anything like, I'm sorry, bear with me, it might take me a little longer. And that's important because you shouldn't have to apologize for something that's out of your control. I just wanted to let you know that I stutter, so you may hear me repeat some sounds or I might get stuck. The second question I asked in my survey was, when you find yourself in a situation with other faculty members, maybe faculty members that you either don't know or you don't know very well, do you mention your stuttering in that situation? And these are some of the responses that I got to that. And it was not universal. Not everyone did mention it. Let's see. I'm at a fairly small university, so most people know that I stutter. So he didn't always feel like he had to mention it. This guy or woman was 50-50, whether they disclose or not. If there's an easy opportunity, maybe I'll mention it. This particular person says that I've come to realize that my colleagues are more interested in what I have to say instead of how I'm saying it, which was part of the advice that Aisha gave earlier. Listen to what I'm saying, not how I'm saying it. Okay, and my last question was, is there anything you'd like to share with me about your experiences as a faculty member who stutters? And these are some great examples I got. We have an incredible opportunity to inform others about stuttering, and I would say also a responsibility to do so. We can serve as models of what can be done, whether you stutter or not. Sometimes disclosure is appropriate and awesome. Other times it's not necessary and maybe uncalled for. That was another response. Who's this? James Rodriguez. One of the best soccer players in the world. Maybe some people think the best, right? And he stutters. Some more wisdom. I always feel better having mentioned it. I like people knowing that I stutter so they're not puzzled or surprised by my speech. And that's kind of why disclosure works, because once I tell you that you might hear me stuttering, I don't have to worry about what you think when I get tripped up a little bit. I've always found a welcoming environment in my academic settings with stuttering, at least as a faculty member. As a student and resident, such was not the case. This is from a faculty member who is the chair of a psych department right now. As a resident and as a student, he was discouraged from going into medicine, especially this branch of medicine. He was encouraged to go into radiology or something like that where there was less verbal communication. This is one of my favorites, and this guy, I said, can I use your name? And he said, sure. His name is John Wade. Just be open and comfortable with it. We can't expect our listeners to be more comfortable than we are. Having a sense of humor helps too. Great advice.
All right, so we're gonna do something called 3, 2, 1. So we want you all to share 3 things that you learned today, 2 things that you will use in your class, and 1 thing that you want to learn more about. You can take a few minutes to think about this. 3 things that you took away from today, 2 things that you will learn that you will use in your course, and 1 thing that you want to learn more about.
And so that's as a faculty member or as a student, how you'll use what you learned.
All right, are we ready to share? Who would like to go first? Any volunteers?
Start with the first question, something you learned today. Yeah.
Yes.
I learned that only 1% of the adult population stutters.
Did that surprise you?
A little bit.
Did you think it would have been higher or lower?
I thought it would have been higher, personally.
Okay, all right, good. Who else learned something?
I actually, when we said what do we currently know about stuttering, most of mine were secondary stuff that I thought was caused by it, but it's the primary that causes the secondary, it's not like the other way around.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else did you learn today?
There are usually more problems hiding under people who stutter. Maybe they have a lot of more mental issues like anxiety and depression, hopeless.
And the fact that people go to great lengths to hide stuttering tells you a little bit about the impact stutter can have, especially in childhood. Good observation. Anyone want to share something that some way that you'll use this information, some change that you'll make in the classroom or in your job or? Yeah.
First, let me say, I'm a stutterer, so I understand all these things they're talking about. And I teach in the same department as Charlie, and I've been very small classes, 4 or 5 students maybe, and they all know me, so I don't bother to introduce my stutter, but I should, and I will, because they get to know me a little better, and it makes it easier, because I have a few tricks I use to avoid a few helpless words. So I mentioned, I teach a statistics class, and I use the phrase standard deviation a lot. Right? The D just clicks like this. So I say, let's say standard deviation, but the D at the end, and I put D, the symbol D, standard deviation. So I'm starting the same word with the V, which is easy.
So it sounds the same to us, but it's very different. And stuttering almost always will occur at the beginning of a word, which is why that trick works well, and it is a trick. Anyone else have something you'd like to share that you might do differently as a result of something you learned today? Maybe online?
I think the people online have indicated that they're a lot more aware of this.
Okay.
Some of the things they might do in class would be to extend time for presentations, to communicate and to make the students more comfortable to express if they have issues such as stuttering, and to talk about it in the class.
That's great.
And just to make people more comfortable.
Great.
All right, anything you want to learn more about?
Just take one of those now. Something you'd like to learn more about, anyone? Yeah.
I am a PhD student for biological sciences, and I actually work in a neuroscience lab right now. So it'd be interesting to learn more about research being done on neural circuits for stuttering.
Talk to me after the workshop.
Okay.
All right. Great.
Thank you all for sharing. Anyone know who this person is?
Actress, what's her name? Emily Blunt, that's right. Did you know she stuttered? Emily Blunt stutters. She also gives presentations at stuttering events as well, so she's very comfortable talking about her stuttering.
All right, so some things to remember, some takeaways from today. That people who stutter are normal. That stutter is not a psychological disorder. The causes of stuttering, as you have heard today, are very complex. And as you've seen in the videos, people stutter in different ways, and stuttering varies. Also, it's okay to stutter. It's not easy to change. There are no limits to what people who stutter can do. And for people who stutter, if you disclose, be open to more questions.
So I want to put in a quick plug for the Montgomery Speech, Language, and Hearing Clinic, where we offer services. I think there's another slide about that. Yep. We have therapy. We also have our support group that meets there once a month. And we have discounts for students, faculty, and staff. See me if you have more questions. We are on the second floor of the closed hip building. That's the Montgomery Clinic, named for Al Montgomery over here. Thank you, Al. And again, the National Stuttering Association. It was not long after I started working with people who stutter that I knew the people I was working with needed more than I could provide them. They needed to hear from other people who stutter and talk with each other about this. And so I found the National Stuttering Association and established that chapter back in 2001. This picture happens to have the two of us, as well as Felicia and Phillip, who you've also heard a little bit about today. And this was a trip to Washington for one of the conferences that we were at.
The NSA is a National Stuttering Association. I go to the NSA groups.
The National Stuttering Association has self-help groups that meet once a month.
The biggest advantage of someone coming to the meeting is to realize that they're not in this alone. Oftentimes we've had people walk through the doors and say, wow, I've never met another person who stutters, let alone a whole group of people.
When I stutter with my friends at the NSA, it feels like that they understand.
Hearing everyone else's experiences, I found it to be really inspiring, and I left feeling a lot more confident about myself and my abilities as a person who stutters.
The difference that going to the NSA meetings makes on people's lives, giving them an outlet to discuss their issues related to speech, and knowing that there is a great community out there that will accept them for who they are.
It's a place where I can go, where I can recharge and be very, very comfortable speaking.
Even though we cannot take away each other's stutter, but we are there to give each other that boost, to give each other that encouragement. We are there to give each other that nudge, We cannot take it away, we cannot cure it, but we're there to help you live this life as best as you can.
All right, so as mentioned, we have a national conference every year. This year it was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and next year it will be in Newport Beach, California, July 1st through 5th of next year.
So something else is coming up this week that I wanted to let you all know about. You see something on the table about this. We are very fortunate to have a screening of a wonderful documentary about stuttering, an award-winning documentary called When I Stutter. We are flying in the filmmaker for this event, and at the conclusion of the film, we are going to have a panel discussion about the film and about stuttering. And this is taking place this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. in the Russell House Theater. And it's free to the public. Would love for, it's an event for people on campus and off campus, faculty, students, staff, friends, anyone who's interested. It's a great film, and it should be a really exciting event altogether. Aisha's going to represent the Center for Teaching Excellence on the panel discussion.
We have some quotes here about stuttering. People who stutter have the unique opportunity to teach the world to listen. Anything I've done that was ultimately worthwhile initially scared me to death. Stuttering is what happens when we speak, but it's not who we are. And he who is not every day conquering some fear has not learned the secret of life.
So if you go back real quick, the second and fourth ones you see are about overcoming fear. And that's a big part of getting out ahead of your stuttering, is working past that fear that is very real in the lives of people who stutter.
We have some resources here that is also in this handout that is here. So this is an electronic handout. You can get information about everything that we discussed today. If you go to this link, then you'll be able to get that handout. What questions do you have for us?
Got a few minutes left for questions.
This is from online?
Right.
Okay. First of all, they wouldn't know if perhaps they should include something about stuttering on a syllabus, and if so, where?
That's a good question. I would say, well, stuttering is recognized by the ADA as a disability, and I think any good syllabus should have a disability statement. Is that,
yes.
I should defer that
yes,
to
any
the,
syllabus should have a disability statement. So I think that's probably good enough there. And then we've had conversations with the Student Disability Resource Center, and they let us know about some accommodations that they do have for students who stutter.
Who else has a question?
Well, thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming.